So today we're going to talk about myths, drug testing myths. Now, all of these, or most of them, I should say, I talk to a lot of you guys throughout the day. I see some familiar names here. Some of them I talk to more than others. Hey, Melissa, how are you doing? So, what I've learned after talking to you guys throughout the years is, again, a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. But it's a constant reminder that my job is so much easier than your job. You guys have all the respect in the world. I bow down to what you guys do all day. It's hard work. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not doing a difficult job. I can't even imagine trying to do what you do on a daily basis, trying to hear all these excuses that we're going to talk about, these myths that we're going to talk about, and you have to deal with this one-on-one with an individual who has serious thoughts about these things. It's a very difficult job, and kudos to you. Give yourselves a round of applause. I think it's awesome, and obviously we wouldn't be where we are without you, and the people that you do your work for, whether you're in criminal justice, whether you're in healthcare, the people you're helping would not get that help if it weren't for you and you dealing with this type of thing. So again, hats off. Give yourself a round of applause and take a deep bow because you guys really deserve it. This side, this is easy compared to that. So, all right. So we're going to first talk about some myths. So my favorite myths involve basically incidental contact. My favorite one of all is I was at a concert Friday night and somebody there was smoking pot next to me. That must be why I'm positive on my THC test. No, it does not work that way. In order for you to have a detectable amount of THC in your urine, you would have had to have ingested enough to feel the effects of that THC. And that's going to be a common theme about what we're talking about here today. A lot of it has to do with whether or not you feel the effects. So taking that concert scenario, let's shrink it. Let's say you're in a Volkswagen Bug with the windows up and there's 5 people in there with you all smoking a joint. Okay, yeah, you might get enough THC in your system to show positive on a urine test, but I guarantee you were also intoxicated from all that smoke that was going on. So again, if you just smelling weed is not going to make you positive. If you are positive, you were definitely under the effects of that drug at the same time. And the counter to that is, my people in my family in our little trailer, they all smoke methamphetamines. I don't, but there's just so much meth smoke that must be why I'm positive on my methamphetamine test. And again, no, it just does not work that way. You would have to have ingested enough to feel the effects in order to produce a detectable amount in your urine. That's absolute. So that's the big part of incidental contact. The other side of incidental contact would be touch. A lot of people, I saw white powder and I wiped it off the table. Therefore, that's why I'm positive on fentanyl or cocaine or methamphetamine or whatever it is. But let's focus on fentanyl real quick, because for years we would hear horror stories about somebody coming into vague contact with fentanyl. You're touching a powder on a surface of something, and then they're driving themselves to the hospital to get a Narcan shot. So first of all, fentanyl doesn't work that way. Fentanyl has notoriously horrible transdermal properties. And when I say transdermal, I mean getting into your bloodstream, soaking through the skin. Fentanyl just does not work at all that way. You could give me a big bucket of fentanyl and I would gladly dip my hands in it and not worry about any effects of the fentanyl. Now, granted, if I had a cut on my hand, an open cut, I would worry. Another thing to worry about is people touch their face a lot. I think I've touched my face 3 times already since we started this webinar. So mucous membranes, obviously a concern, mouth, nose, your eyes. If you've ever cut a jalapeno pepper and you went and rubbed your eye or picked your nose or picked your tooth or whatever, you understand what can happen on your skin can go into your mucous membrane and how much it affects you. Excuse me. By the way, the other side of that myth, if you can drive yourself to the hospital, you're not overdosing on fentanyl, period, hands down. Another part of the touch one, and this is also from a legitimate argument I had from one of your clients, one of your participants, was my husband uses methamphetamine and we had unprotected sex. That must be why I'm positive on my methamphetamine panel. No, again, it does not work that way. Mild touching, even intimate touching like that, is not enough to get enough methamphetamine into your system for you to show a positive result on a urine drug test. It just doesn't work that way. While we're on the subject of touch, hand sanitizer. People who are obsessively using hand sanitizer, and we see a lot of that, especially with COVID. I know we're 5 years in at this point, but people have become very neurotic or obsessed about using hand sanitizer. And there's a lot of alcohol in that. And alcohol can be somewhat transdermal. It can get into your bloodstream, but not enough of it's going to get into your bloodstream for you to show a positive on a urine test for alcohol or for ETG, especially ETG. Both of those things are going to require an elevated blood alcohol level. And you're not going to get an elevated blood alcohol level by simply using Purell on your hands. It just does not work that way. Now, if you're drinking it, on the other hand, that's a different story. That is still ethyl alcohol that you're drinking. And speaking of the different alcohols, so we have ethyl alcohol, which is, beer, wine, spirits. That's ethyl alcohol, the one we drink. Or some, not everybody, obviously. So we've had people, for example, who work as a bartender, and they say, I get vodka spilled or tequila spilled on my hand all night. That must be why I'm positive for my alcohol or my ETG. Again, you're not going to absorb enough of it through your skin in that regard to get yourself intoxicated, and therefore not enough for you to show positive on a urine drug test. Excuse me. The other alcohol question, by the way, I do get this one sometimes, is people who work in certain industries where they're using industrial solvents. Most commonly is methyl alcohol, which is another form of alcohol. The difference is methyl alcohol is poison, where ethyl alcohol is only a mild poison. So they're inhaling the fumes all day and wondering if that could be the reason why they're positive. And the answer is definitely not. If you get that much methyl alcohol in your system, you should call an ambulance right away. If you get that much ethyl alcohol in your system, again, the drinking type, then you would feel the effects. You would be intoxicated. You would be drunk, basically. And then the other side of that coin would be mouthwash. People gargle mouthwash. You're not swallowing mouthwash. There's a lot of alcohol in mouthwash, but you're not going to get enough of it through your skin, through your mucous membranes in your mouth, under your tongue, any of that, for you to cause a positive result. And again, if you drink it, absolutely. And then lastly, part on that one is NyQuil. NyQuil does contain alcohol. I think it's like 25% alcohol. So it's fairly strong. And the dosage is for what seems to be about 1.5 ounces shot of NyQuil is usually the little plastic cuppy that comes with it. If they're taking it as directed, that is not enough alcohol to elevate somebody's blood alcohol level, and therefore not enough alcohol to ever give us a positive on either an alcohol test, whether it be a breathalyzer or an ETG test, but especially not on a urine test. Absolutely not. All right, so that's for our myths. Next, we're going to talk about truths. Now, myths can be true. Myths are, born of excuses. Doesn't always make them incorrect. There's old wives' tales that some of them are correct. The moss grows on the next side of the tree, whatever it is, whatever. So some of the truths, some of the real things that we do see for people failing a drug test is, number one, is cross-reactivity. We do know of medications that are known to cross-react and cause a false positive on a drug screen. Go over the big five for you real quick. On the PCP panel, there's actually 2 medications, Effexor and Lamictal. Again, both cause a false positive on the PCP panel. And by the way, if I go too fast at any of this, just simply comment or leave a note. And when you log off, it'll ask for final comments. And we'll make sure we get you all this information that you might have not jotted down as quickly as you would have liked. So after PCP, we have the oxycodone panel. There we have something called naltrexone, which if you're unfamiliar, it is a medication that's become a lot more popular now due to the Vivitrol shot, which is to help opioid misuse disorder, or opioid use disorder. So Vivitrol, naltrexone will cause a false positive on the oxycodone panel. On the methadone panel, we have something called doxylamine. Doxylamine is the sleepy part of Unisom and some other nighttime, I think like some of the NyQuil nighttime formulations use doxylamine as their sleepy part. That will cause a false positive on the methadone panel. We're coming into cold and flu season, so you people in cold climes may see an increase in false positives on your methadone panel. The next one would be on the methamphetamine panel. Here we have something called Zantac, which is an over-the-counter acid reflux medication, generic being ranitidine. And this will pretty consistently cause a false positive on the methamphetamine panel. And then lastly, we have a couple of things that may or may not cause a false positive on the fentanyl panel. And this is where I want you to be really careful. And this is where I want you to take advantage of me as a resource. Because if you're unsure about something, you're better off asking and making sure than, taking a chance and hoping that the judge agrees or hoping that, the parole board agrees, whoever it might be. One version of fentanyl, because there are multiple different versions of a fentanyl test. The original fentanyl test would be cross-reactive to buspirone or Buspar. The second generation could get false positives from trazodone. The third generation is supposedly not having any cross-reactivity at all, and we're going to see about that. It's still very new. But if you do have concerns about that, please, again, don't just guess. Please reach out to me. I will tell you which fentanyl panel you're using, the benefits and the side effects and that sort of thing, and we'll make sure that you're actually giving the correct answer when you're looking at the results. Excuse me. So those are the big cross reactants. So when someone says, hey, I must be positive on my methamphetamine panel because I took Zantac, it is entirely possible. It's one of these are some instances where really you need laboratory confirmation to know what's real and what's not real. Ranitidine or Zantac is not going to cause a false positive on a laboratory confirmation. It's only on a screen. It's a chemical reaction. It's imperfect. Pretty close. We're up over 99%, but there are some things that can cross-react. The other true myth, or the next true myth, I should say, would be adulteration. I'm sorry, skipped one. That's why I need a slideshow. The next one would be poppy seeds. So there are a lot of poppy foods out there. I'm going to post, when we post the recording of this webinar, which should be in the next day or two, I'll make sure I put a link there to the blog that I did on poppy seeds. But poppy seeds will absolutely give a positive result for at least codeine and morphine. I did some experimentation. I went to the local deli and got a pastrami sandwich on a nice poppy seed Kaiser bun. And I was positive on the opiate panel for 2 days. I sent them all out to the lab, and the lab confirmed there was presence of codeine and morphine. The following week, I went to Einstein's Bagels, a national bagel chain, and had a poppy seed bagel, just a bagel. I was positive for 2 days, and again, confirmed via laboratory. So when the laboratory looks at this, they say, yes, we see codeine, we see morphine. They don't know, there's no way for them to know where that codeine and morphine came from. It could have been from street drugs, could have been from Tylenol 3, Tylenol 4, or whatever, but it could have also been from poppy seeds. So that is absolutely something that can and does happen. Some of my research when I did that blog said that there are some poppy seeds that actually will show positive for oxycodone. That didn't happen to me in my experimentation, but it was definitely a very reliable source. So you got to look out for that. There's no way to really know. A lot of probation and parole, they'll make you sign something that says you can't eat poppy foods. If you do, you get dinged, whatever that ding means. There are residential healthcare facilities that are unfortunately having to turn away donations of poppy-based foods. So they don't want to get into the argument at the end of the day whether this opiate positive is actually from poppy seeds or not. So be aware of that. That is something that is absolutely true. And then the next one for the truths would be adulteration. So big adulterant, you've heard of people drinking small amounts of bleach, or you've heard of people adding bleach or Visine to the specimen. Visine has a very mild oxidizing agent in it as well. And any oxidizing agent like that will absolutely destroy the THC molecule, and it will absolutely render a test negative if it gets mixed in with the urine in enough time beforehand. So somebody drinks bleach, drinks Visine, that will absolutely cause a false negative. That's the importance of adulteration testing, by the way. If you're not testing for adulterants, you could be missing out on a lot of people getting one by you, as the expression goes. And then the other side of that is synthetic urine. They are selling synthetic urine online these days, and it is indistinguishable from human urine in pretty much every way that we have available to test for it. It's going to be good on the creatinine. It's going to be good on the pH, specific gravity. It's going to have the right glutaraldehyde. Everything's going to look like a normal human specimen. In fact, a lot of these places also include hand warmers or glove warmers. And I'm in Florida. I don't know what you guys call them. But they'll include hand warmers. So if somebody puts a Ziploc bag or a flask in their pocket or down their underwear with the hand warmer, they're going to get that specimen up to temperature. So it's going to look normal. Every parameter is going to look normal. It's going to have a great normal temperature to it. So be aware of that. It is possible. In a perfect world, you would be able to watch every specimen being collected. You would watch the specimen leave the donor's body from start to finish, and you would know that that specimen actually did come from that individual. And that leads me to my new favorite excuses. So these two I saved because they were just too good not to share, really. So speaking of synthetic urine, another thing that a lot of people do with synthetic urine, or a lot of men do with synthetic urine, is something called the Whizzinator. So the Whizzinator, which you can order online, is a prosthetic device for men. Think about that for a second. I don't want to say the word. I don't want to be dirty on a Tuesday afternoon. It's a prosthetic device for men that is meant for you to use the synthetic urine and excrete through this prosthetic device into the cup and give you your specimen. They come in about 5 or 6 different flesh tones. So my favorite story, and again, I forget who it was that told me this story, but I couldn't stop laughing. Somebody who was very light complexity, had a very light complexion, used a Whizzinator that was a very dark complexion. So even though they were witnessing the collection, it was pretty obvious that this was not this natural person doing this thing into the cup. So be aware of the Whizzinator. And then lastly is bluing tablets. This one was just, like dumb. I don't know how somebody did this, but if you're unfamiliar with bluing tablets, they're basically literally blue tablets that you put in your toilet tank. So every time you flush the toilet, the new water that comes into the bowl is blue. It's supposedly a deterrent for people from scooping out the toilet water and trying to pass it off as their urine. Well, apparently there was a case where an individual did not realize that the toilet water was blue, and the donor handed the tester this cup full of blue toilet water. There are ways to beat a test, but that's probably the least perfect way of beating a test. All right, I don't see that we have any questions up here yet, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys get back to work. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry you missed out on the slideshow. I don't think we included a picture. Here's a question. Maybe somebody will come up with something. Been eating Delta something gas station gummies. Are they illegal here? Yeah, so anyway, the Deltas, that's a good question. Thank you, Ron. You always come up with good ones. So a lot of the Delta drugs, the gas station dope gummies, and it's sold as flour and vapes and all this, whether it be Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 0, HHC, whatever it is. A lot of these places at the gas station, these gummies are components of THC. So yes, with the current instant tests for THC that are out there, you absolutely would get a positive result for THC, even if it wasn't the illicit Delta 9. Delta 9 is what we think of as weed from, going back 2,000 years. But all these new Deltas that they've kind of gotten under through the loopholes of legality that's sold in a lot of states, it will show positive on the THC. And depending on which lab confirms it, is a very good chance that they will also agree that it is positive. All right, next one, Naomi, what were the medications that false positive for PCP? Those are, again, Effexor, EFF-EXOR, I believe, and Lamictal, LAMICTAL. Vincent says, would you say there are major differences between kids and adults when it comes to medications cross-reacting? Not that I've seen, no. Pretty much physiology is physiology. Back in the day, like with benzo tests, we used to see a lot of weird cross-reactivity with people who were taking multiple, like what I call psych meds, antidepressant, anti-anxiety, anti-seizure, those sort of thing, antipsychotics. And two people could be taking the exact same medication list, but only one of them would cross-react. So I think it has more to do with the physiology of an individual rather than their age or their level of physical maturity. Can I get a copy of the medications? Cody. Yes, Cody, I'll save this comment, and after we get all logged off and cleaned up, I'll make sure I send you the breakdown. We actually have a nice sheet made up on this to remind you. So I'll get that over to you. For one-time marijuana use, how long should that show up in a person's urine? So marijuana is an interesting drug in that regard. Let's say two people share a joint. They're not taking the same size inhalation. They're probably not holding that inhalation for the same length of time. They're getting much different levels of the active ingredient into their bloodstream. So for one-time use, it really depends on how intoxicated they are. I could do a little puff of marijuana and probably never test positive. That's just the nature of it. If I did a medium-sized puff and I held it in as long as I could hold my breath, I would probably get really intoxicated, and I'd probably have a couple of days detection in my urine. But the other thing about THC is it does build up over time. And so the more regular use, the more you use it, it extends that detection window. I've seen as long as 45 days from chronic users. Amy, thank you for answering that question as well. Blaine, can you send a list of all the medications? Yep, same thing. Cool. I will get those out to anyone who's put that request in here. We have a participant that continually tests positive for THC, but when it gets to our lab, it comes back negative. There's one of two things going on there, Katie. I would check with your lab to see if they are detecting the other deltas, Delta 8, Delta 0, HHC, that sort of thing. That could be one thing, because I have talked to some laboratories that don't do it that way. They only will detect it if it's Delta 9, the illicit one. That could be one thing. Or they could be adding an oxidizing agent like bleach or Visine, because that does take a little bit of time to destroy that molecule. So it doesn't always affect the instant test, because urine's already soaking up before it's had a chance to do its thing. But then a lot of times the lab will come back and it would be negative. So if you're using clinical science through us, then it's got to be that latter thing, because clinical science will show positive, even if it's Delta 8 or Delta 0. Can you educate us on any gas station dope out there? Yes, Susan, but not today, because that's it's its own thing. I actually have a webinar that we did probably a couple of years ago at this point. It's all about the gas station dopes. I can definitely send you the recording of that, or we can schedule a training. I know Adam, anything you need done, he'll do for you, Susan. Don't worry about it. Destiny says, does the cup only detect a certain amount of the substance in urine? Yes, basically there is what we call a cutoff level or a threshold. There is a minimum amount needed, or a minimum concentration needed to trigger a positive result. The THC test is most commonly at 50 nanograms per milliliter. So it's weird. It's a weight per a volume. So it's got to have 50 nanograms of substance per every milliliter of liquid. Most of our tests, we like to have an extra sensitive test, because you get better detection. Most of our cups actually have a cutoff of 25 nanograms per milliliter. And again, that's just THC. Every drug has its own cutoff. Some of them can't go too sensitive, because then they're not as accurate. But we get as sensitive as we can, with it still being reliable. But it does require a certain amount to pick it up on the test. Soda as an adulterant, you can dilute your specimen by just drinking a lot of fluids, regardless of what fluid it is. And soda is essentially just carbonated water. Excuse me. So definitely can be used as a diluent. But the thing about dilution is it doesn't always prove intent. Somebody drinks a lot of water, doesn't mean they did it because they wanted to beat the test. Maybe they just started a workout that morning and had to drink a lot. So keep that in mind. You're thinking about, baking. Sorry, I missed the question completely. Baking soda. No, I have not heard of baking soda as being a reliable adulterant in any way. I could do some digging on that for you, Amy, just to make sure I didn't overlook it somehow. But I don't think that carbonate as a substance will actually cause any real change to the results. As far as testing positive for K2, K3, there's nothing that is known to cause a false positive for K2 or K3 or K4 as they're working on now. But the one problem we have, I don't want to call it a problem, really, it's limited because we've been testing THC I've been testing it for 25 years. They've probably been testing it 25 years before I started. We have a lot of history. Everybody's testing for THC. Anytime you go over one panel, it's almost always going to include a THC panel. So we have a lot of history there. K2, K3, it's been being tested now for about, let's say, 8 years, maybe 9 years. And not everybody's testing for it. So if there is something out there, while possible, nothing has come up that has shown any consistent reason why it's positive. And the other part that's tricky about K2, K3 is these are both a class of drugs called synthetic cannabinoids, and there are over 100 of them. So our instant test right now for K2, K3 tests for, I think, 38 or something like that. Most laboratories are testing for about 20 or 30 of them, not always the same 20 or 30. So there could be a lot that's getting past us in general with the class of drugs, and it is unfortunate. Same thing with bath salts. Actually, that one's even trickier. So Michaela had the same question. Hopefully that answered that. List of medications. Yep, I'll make sure we get a copy of that. Yes, Nick. Cody, as far as kratom, unfortunately does require its own test, which is something that is available. But there is a kratom test out there that's pretty reliable, probably over 98% accurate. And then typically almost every kratom I've seen come back from the lab work that I deal with has been positive. So it seems like it is pretty reliable. Samantha, another request for the list. Absolutely. As well as Kevin. Exercise really store THC in the body, causing positive result for THC within reason. If somebody's been clean for a month after, let's say they were a chronic user, been clean been positive for 45 days, and now they're clean for a month, and then they start working out. No, you're not going to suddenly see THC pop out of your fat cells that long after the fact. So Dakota, same question about a list. Make sure we get that to you. Scheduled presentation on gas station dope. Again, Blaine, I'll go ahead and send you the link to the last one we did. It might need some updating, unfortunately. But for now, it's pretty good information. Asheville, and shout out to Asheville. I think I might be heading there soon. I'm actually heading there next week to visit. So let's see. Is having nitrous common? Is there a way to test for it? It is pretty common. It has its niche group, a lot of concert goers, especially jam bands and raves. We see a lot of use like that. It's not typically known as like a house drug where you sit around watching football doing whippets, but yeah, it's very common. And unfortunately, no, there's not a way to test for that at this time. Matthews, sorry, I gotta go back to Amy. Amy, I have to put the rest of that. I'll put the two sides of that question together. My scrolling is messing with me right now, but I'll make sure I get you an answer on that. Bus bar hits hot for fentanyl. Nurses and doctors all get as again, Susan. I think we talked about this briefly yesterday when we spoke. It depends. I think the kratom test that you're using right now on the B1601M, yes, is going to be for buspirone. We do have another version of it that's going to do trazodone instead of buspirone, but then you lose some window of detection. I'll have that whole conversation with you afterward. I don't want to bore everybody with it. Christian, another request for that list. Audra, what is kratom? Kratom is an herbal substance that you're find in, again, I call it a gas station dope. A lot of convenience stores. It's basically a mild opioid. It's a very interesting product from a science point of view. A lot of people are using it to combat withdrawal symptoms or for mild pain if they don't do well with opioids. I will send you a link to the webinar that we did on kratom not too long ago. Should hopefully provide some insight into that. But it is something that, depending on where you are, it might be something that's very worth testing for sure. All right. Marcus, another request for the false positive list. No problem. And Thelma as well. And then Cody. Oh, yeah, and then Cody with a request for the crowd. All right. I got my work cut out for me when I get done with this. Again, I want to thank you guys for your time. I love that you guys come here, spend time with me. I mean, again, it's hugely important to me. So to see other people agree enough to come and give me a half an hour of their day, that's huge, and I'm so thankful. I wish my slideshow had worked today. You wouldn't have had to look at this the whole time, but it happens. The show must go on. Anyway, thank you all very much for your time today, and I hope you have a great day. And we'll until next time, keep on testing.